When a person sees things getting darker, yeah, even if it's just a slight overcast, something like that, why not inform yourself? At the very least, you leave the office with more information and some literature.
Yeah.
And you never have to darken our door again.
Yep. No. Exactly. Right. So it's
Right.
so really, when somebody's going to talk to somebody, I mean, the difference is if you're licensed and you're a trustee, you can bring options to the table that maybe another debt counselor cannot because they're not licensed.
That's the whole idea. Yeah. And of course, the solutions that we provide are they're provided under the authority of the courts. Now, in Canada, we trust our courts to be fair. Okay? Western world, generally, courts are separated from the legislative and from the executive and all that. And our courts, because of that independence, we understand them to be essentially fair. They're human. They err from time to time. Okay? And they're as fallible as anything else. But we trust them to generally look at something with an open mind. Right? So when we walk into a court and we see a judge and we're there disputing something with somebody else, both of us can walk in and feel that that person is not on the other guy's side from the outset. Okay? So the whole insolvency business, the way it is practiced, is based on the authority of this court to resolve the problems fairly between the people who are in conflict, the creditors and the debtor. Right? So because of the way the system is set up, and because of the gravity of it all, only a licensed insolvency trustee can administer these things, can administer the processes that resolve it through this system, through this authority. So you might say that, okay, why not just cut to the chase and go see an insolvency trustee to get, now maybe you don't need that much. Maybe you don't have to go that far. Maybe you can go see a licensed trustee, and after all, really all you need is that financial planner. Mm-hmm. Or maybe all you need is a debt counselor or something to help you organize your budget, and just square things off with people or whatnot.
And the trustee will help you kind of educate you on that, right?
And in some cases, we can actually provide that service. We have people on our staff that can provide that kind of counseling service. Yeah.
Okay. One of the other things I'd like to touch on is really the different types of debt. So people come to you, and credit card debt is the obvious one, right? But there's also, it could be student loans. It could be the CRA is after you for back taxes. It could be, you've got yourself into debt through gambling or addiction, right? Are those all things that you see, like, each and every week when you meet people?
Yes, of course. What we deal with, whether it's a bankruptcy or a proposal, are all the debts that a person has. But like any law, there's always going to be something that falls outside the parameters of the intent of that law. For instance, in bankruptcy or proposals, consumer proposals, a debt for unpaid child support, the bankruptcy or the proposal doesn't get rid of that for you. It doesn't cover that. Okay, that operates outside that process. Okay. Now, if you think about it, that debt's not really a commercial debt, is it?
No, it is not.
It's really a social and moral obligation, right? So the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act has provisions in it to exclude certain debts that are deemed, for whatever reason, to be outside the pale, shall we say. Okay? There's a list of them in the section of the Bankruptcy Act that speaks of these things. I think there's about 10 of them, I can't remember now, but essentially they involve things like this, the support payments. They involve debts that were incurred fraudulently. If you incurred a debt through some kind of criminal or pseudo-criminal act or something like that, there shouldn't be another law that just wipes it out and allows you to get away with it, right? There are other miscellaneous debts that fall under that, but one of the most common one is the student loan one that you mentioned. Yeah. A student loan, there are many different opinions on student loans, right? There are people who say we shouldn't have student loans. We should just give them the money, right? Then there are other people who say they should never be forgiven, right? You got to pay them until you're 92 years old or whatnot. and everything in between. Now we have, as a society, we have devolved this into a time-related issue. So if a person goes bankrupt or does a proposal, and they owe $20,000 in student loans, and they ceased to be a full or part-time student more than 7 years ago, 7 years before they come in to do the bankruptcy, okay, then that student loan debt will be treated as an ordinary debt. The thinking being, I suppose, that over the 7 years they've made every effort they could. You know, 7 years is a sufficient time to determine that a person has made those efforts, and therefore it should just be treated like every other debt. If you can't pay the other debts, you can't pay this. Okay? But if he hasn't been out of school 7 years, okay, then when he gets to the point where this debt would be released through the discharge of the bankruptcy or through the full payment of the proposal, whatever he owed in student loan will still be there to be paid. Okay, it won't be released from that.
Okay.
Okay. General idea. You know, there are bobs and weaves there that come into play, but that's generally the way it works.
Okay, so I also know that you do a lot of different seminars and whatnot with accountants and other financial type people.
If they'll have me.
If they'll have you, what general advice do you give them to, you know, what should they be looking for when you're talking to an accountant, for example? What should they be looking for to figure out if maybe one of their clients should actually sit down and have a conversation with you?
It's a good question, isn't it? An accountant or a financial planner. Often a financial planner is associated with insurance companies and those kinds of things, right? They get a very up close and personal look at how an individual is managing his finances, isn't it?
They do.
I suppose to a greater or lesser extent, depending on the relationship and whatnot, but and on the person's business and so on and so forth. But they have a fairly good idea. So, what are the signs? What are the signs that a person is starting to struggle a bit? Yeah. Well, the obvious signs. What's his income? You know, how are the responsibilities being handled through the ordinary machinations of the of a monthly performance budget, things like that. There are other telltale things like outside stresses. There might be a period of unemployment. How did that work out? The marital issues that come up. Let's face it, how many things can go wrong for individuals or between people, right? So it's kind of an interesting thing. The best people I've met in that field, in the field of helping somebody with their financial world, their financial life, the best people really knew their customer, their client. They knew them beyond the numbers. Kind of thing. If all you see are the numbers, it may be difficult.
Yep.
I suspect that the more you know about your client at the human level, shall we say, with everything that means, the better shot you have of being able to see things before they happen.
Yep. So it's more the conversations that you're having with your your accountant, your financial planner, and they should be.
Maybe it's that breakfast meeting.
Yeah.
Who knows? Right?
Yeah.
It's just a chat. You're not trying to sell them anything. Just another touch base type meeting.
Okay. All right. So we're just about ready to wrap up here. Is there any advice that you'd like to give somebody out there that is currently stressed out right now? They've got they're in a lot of debt. Short of obviously come in to see you, and I know you also offer after hours appointments as well. So if somebody's working during the day, they can come in and see you at night, for example.
Yep.
So is there any last words you'd like to give?
As one of my competitors say, we offer evening appointments, we offer flexible payments and all the rest of that stuff. But I won't steal his thunder.
Okay.
He's a good friend of mine. Let's go back to what I said earlier. A call to us may be the most stress-relieving call you ever make. That isn't as flippant as it sounds. This is what I'm told. This is what I've been told by people. You know, I may have come up with the phrase, okay, but it's not the idea is not. I didn't come up with that idea. You know.
Yep.
So a call to us, yeah. You know, even if you don't really think you need it, how much is it going to hurt you?
Yep, that's true. Yep. So really, bottom line is, if you're in debt, if you're struggling, it doesn't hurt to come in and have a chat with Richard or another trustee. Find out what your options are.
That's right.
Right. It's going to reduce a lot of the stress that you have, and most of it, again, as you had said previously, is the unknowing. Right. Not knowing what's.
Remember an old adage, right? Knowledge is power. Right? The biggest thing we do for people, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, maybe I should have. The biggest thing I think we do for people is we empower them to be able to deal with their problems. So they can deal with their problems. We're only the vehicle.
Okay. All right, Richard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken.
As always, full of information, and I hope to interview you again.
Let's do it
real soon.
again.
Okay. Thank you.